If you don't learn to make money while you sleep, you'll work until you die. This might sound harsh, even absurd, but consider this. Are you truly building wealth or simply surviving month to month? Today, I'll reveal 5 steps wealthy individuals use to rapidly build fortunes. Principles that seem simple, yet failing to apply them practically signs your long-term financial failure. The primary difference between those who build wealth and those who merely dream of it lies in how they utilize the most valuable resource: time. You can lose money and recover it, but every passing minute is gone forever. This is the most common mistake. People waste time saving a few dollars when they could be using that time to multiply their wealth exponentially. Think about it. How many hours have you wasted on tasks someone else could have done, simply because you believed no one could do it as well as you? How many times have you neglected self-investment because you felt you didn't have time? This is why many work hard their entire lives and end up with nothing. It's not a lack of intelligence, but misallocation of time on things that don't increase their life's value. The wealthy understand that time and money are scarce resources. Just as they can't invest in every asset, they can't invest their time in every activity. They ask themselves a question that should guide our daily decisions. Where should I focus my energy now to maximize future results? This requires courage, saying no to many things and concentrating on what truly matters. A historical example is Italian economist Vilfredo Pareto. Analyzing Italian land distribution, he noticed 20% of families controlled 80% of the land. This pattern repeated across various levels, showing that in nearly every context, a few elements account for most results. This is the 80-20 principle. Applying this to time use, it's clear. A small fraction of our actions yields most of our results. The secret is identifying that 20% and eliminating the rest. Why is this so difficult? It's more comfortable filling schedules with small tasks than tackling life-altering ones. Answering emails, organizing spreadsheets, cleaning or reviewing work details is easier than pursuing big ideas, starting bold projects, or taking impactful risks. Fear of failure paralyzes. The no-time excuse sounds convincing, but it's disguised fear. Napoleon Hill experienced this intensely. He could have chosen stable, quick-return jobs, but dedicated over 2 decades interviewing the wealthiest men of his time, like Henry Ford and Thomas Edison. Imagine the psychological pressure of years without immediate returns, facing criticism and ridicule, investing time in something uncertain. This bold choice, consciously allocating time for extraordinary results, transformed his life and influenced millions. How many would bet years of their lives on something uncertain? Are you investing time in tasks that can transform your finances, or just putting out daily fires? Are you wasting energy on things anyone could do, neglecting what only you can achieve? The wealthy don't try to do everything. They delegate, automate, and buy time. It's easier to enrich yourself by paying for simple tasks, freeing your schedule for high-impact activities. How many hours weekly do you spend saving a few dollars instead of investing that time in something that could yield hundreds or thousands more in the future? This explains why people believe they need to be born into wealth. History shows the opposite. Many inherited fortunes but squandered them due to poor time and resource management. Others, starting from nothing, built empires by using their time to learn, undertake, and create assets. The Ginley family in Brazil and the Vanderbilts in the United States are classic examples of dynasties that lost vast fortunes due to a lack of understanding of this principle. Misused time inevitably leads to wealth destruction, even immense wealth. If billionaire families can lose everything through poor time and money allocation, what makes you think you can waste yours and still achieve financial freedom? Wealth is about allocation. Every choice, every yes and no, every hour spent or wasted determines your future fortune. Do you prefer spending evenings watching non-enriching series or studying to increase income? Are you proud of saving a few dollars by washing your car yourself or using that time to plan a new income stream? Time is democratic. Everyone gets 24 hours a day. The difference is that most exchange time for barely sufficient salaries, while the wealthy invested in opportunity. This daily decision, repeated for years, separates fortune builders from those stuck in place. There's a fundamental difference between those chasing money and those making money chase them. Building assets. This is crucial for moving beyond paying bills to accumulating real wealth. Many confuse assets with liabilities. When you receive your salary, where does it go? The middle class thinks they're building wealth buying a new car, an unaffordable house, or the latest appliances. But these don't put money in your pocket, they create expenses. That's a liability, not an asset. An asset generates returns, multiplies your capital, or preserves purchasing power. It works for you even when you're not present. Robert Kiyosaki, in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, made this clear. The poor only have expenses. The middle class buys liabilities thinking they're assets, and the rich focus on acquiring income-producing assets. Accumulating assets early creates early freedom. Accumulating liabilities creates debt. Assets include your own businesses, investments in dividend-paying companies, real estate funds generating cash flow, appreciating real estate, or digital assets like Bitcoin, which in the last 10 years has delivered an average annual appreciation of approximately 70% in dollars. Would you rather have 6% annual dividends from a stable company, or a chance to multiply your capital many times over with exponentially growing assets? The wealthy evaluate where a dollar can yield the most and allocate capital there, even if it means waiting longer for returns. It's not just where to invest, but how to protect yourself. The wealthy diversify. They never place all their wealth in one country, market, or currency. Imagine what would happen if your entire fortune was tied to a collapsing economy. High-level investors often have international assets, foreign real estate, and stakes in companies from different countries. This strategy ensures your life doesn't crumble with a local economic disaster. If this seems distant, start small. Buying a share is buying a piece of a company. Investing in a real estate fund is owning a fraction of income-generating properties. Holding some reserves in dollars protects against domestic crises. The issue isn't the initial capital size, but the habit of consistently directing part of your income towards building assets. If you never start, you'll remain perpetually dependent on your job. A crucial psychological aspect is the fear of loss. People think, what if I invest and it goes wrong? But the question should be, what if I don't invest and remain in the same situation for life? Fear of losing is often greater than fear of never winning. This keeps many stagnant. Consider Oprah Winfrey as a real-life example of how this principle can transform destinies. She didn't become a millionaire solely from her presenter's salary. She leveraged her income to acquire stakes in businesses, TV channels, and companies. She transformed active income into assets that multiplied over time. Now consider someone like Mike Tyson. During his career, he earned over $300 million, but spent it all on mansions, luxury cars, and extravagances that generated no return. The result? Bankruptcy. Two opposing paths, two different ways of handling the same resource. And you might be wondering, but I don't have enough money to invest. How do I start? That's the most common trap. People believe they need to earn a lot before investing, when, in reality, it's the act of investing that lays the foundation for earning a great deal in the future. It's not about the initial amount, but the consistency. Investing $100 a month in assets may seem insignificant today, but in a few years, it can turn into thousands, thanks to compound interest. Building assets requires vision, discipline, and patience. It's not about getting rich overnight, but about creating a machine that works for you every day, even when you decide to rest. Those who understand this change how they view money. Every dollar that comes in isn't just for immediate consumption, but a seed that can multiply into many trees in the future. The question is, will you plant these seeds or eat them all today? If there's one resource the wealthy master better than anyone else, it's leverage. And when I talk about leverage, I'm not just referring to borrowing money to invest, although that can be part of it. I'm talking about something much bigger: intelligently using people, technology, media, and capital to multiply results at a speed that would be impossible to achieve alone. Most people try to solve everything on their own. They want to be the best at work, manage the household, handle their finances, and juggle side projects. But in the end, they're exhausted and without real results. The wealthy see the world differently. They understand they don't need to be the smartest in every area. They just need to know how to bring together those who are. That's why so many successful people prefer to be in rooms where they're the least intelligent. They know that true strength lies not in centralization, but in learning from those who know more and using that knowledge to their advantage. Napoleon Hill observed this over decades. When interviewing millionaires like Henry Ford, he was impressed to realize that many of them didn't have extensive academic backgrounds or weren't experts in all areas of their businesses. But they had an unusual ability. They knew how to surround themselves with more competent people and extract the best from them. This allowed them to create gigantic organizations that functioned like prosperity machines. And here's the point: you don't need to know everything. You just need to know how to use the intelligence and effort of others. Now consider another type of leverage: financial leverage. Many people are scared of the word debt, but what truly destroys people isn't debt itself, it's bad debt. Debt incurred on credit cards, overdraft protection, or loans with exorbitant interest rates, reaching over 40% annually. The wealthy, on the other hand, use what's called good debt. They obtain capital at low interest rates to invest in something that generates a higher return than the cost of money. That's exactly how large real estate empires are built. You finance a property at a lower interest rate than the profitability it will generate, and the asset pays for itself over time. Let me give you a simple example. There was a case where a young woman despaired over having incurred a debt of about $200,000 in education. To her, it seemed like the end of the world. But this debt didn't have high interest. It was practically interest-free, and it was precisely this investment in knowledge that opened doors to a career with much higher earnings. Bad debt is debt that traps you. Good debt is debt that opens doors. The question is, are you avoiding any kind of debt out of fear, or are you learning to distinguish when it can be a powerful lever to multiply your earnings? But it doesn't stop there. There are even more impactful forms of leverage, such as technology and media. Today, a simple video on the internet can reach millions of people in a matter of hours. It's as if your message is multiplied without you needing to be present in every place. That's media working as a lever. Think of public figures like Gary Vaynerchuk. He built a large part of his empire because he understood early on that the internet could scale his voice infinitely. Compare that to someone who can only communicate in a closed room with 10 people. Who do you think will have more impact in the long run? And when we talk about technology, the logic is the same. A man with his own hands can produce little. With a simple tool, he produces more. With machines, even more. Now, with software, robots, and artificial intelligence, it's possible to create results that previously would have taken months in just a few hours. The wealthy see technology not as a threat, but as a multiplier of their time and ideas. But this is where many people fail. They confuse leverage with uncontrolled risk. They think that using people means delegating everything without supervision, that using debt means spending more than they can afford, that using media means exposing themselves without strategy. That's not leverage, that's recklessness. True leverage is planned, conscious, and always with a clear objective of a greater return than the initial effort. Want to see what happens when someone doesn't understand this logic? Nicolas Cage, during his most successful years in Hollywood, accumulated over $150 million. But instead of using intelligent leverage to multiply his fortune, he bought dozens of houses, luxury cars, and even exotic animals. Result? He lost practically everything and found himself forced to accept roles in films just to pay off debts. He had the resources, but he didn't know how to multiply them. Now I ask you, how have you been using leverage in your life? Do you still insist on trying to solve everything alone, spending hours on tasks that don't increase your net worth? Or have you already learned to use people, capital, technology, and media to multiply results? The wealthy don't go further because they work harder, but because they work smarter. They know that alone they can walk fast, but with leverage, they can move the whole world. One of the biggest differences between those who achieve wealth and those who spend their entire lives trying is the ability to think long-term. It seems simple, but the truth is that the vast majority of people are immediate gratification seekers. They want rewards now, results now, pleasure now. That's why we so often hear stories of people who win the lottery, gain millions in an instant, and a few years later are bankrupt again. They don't know how to wait. They don't know how to give up the present in exchange for a greater future. This behavior even has a name in economics: time preference. The higher your time preference, the more you value the present and the less you care about the future. It's the typical thinking of someone who says, "I deserve to enjoy myself today. We'll see tomorrow." Those who get rich have a low time preference. They are able to sacrifice the now to reap the rewards in the future. This doesn't mean living in eternal deprivation, but understanding that every choice made today can multiply exponentially over time. One of the best-known examples that proves this is the famous Stanford marshmallow experiment. Children were placed in a room and given a marshmallow. The researcher said, "If you don't eat this candy now and wait until I return, you'll get another one." The curious thing is that some children couldn't resist and ate it immediately. Others suffered, squirmed, but held back the temptation. The study followed these children for years and revealed something incredible. Those who managed to wait had better grades, entered more prestigious universities, had better health indexes, and more stable careers. The simple fact of knowing how to wait shaped their entire trajectory, and the same goes for money. How many times have you bought something impulsively and regretted it later? How many times have you thought, "I could have saved that money and invested it"? This is the trap of immediacy. Wealth is not built with an isolated decision, but with the accumulation of intelligent choices made day after day, year after year. Consider the example of Napoleon Hill. He dedicated more than 20 years of his life to interviewing the richest and most powerful men of his time. Imagine spending 2 decades without immediate return, facing criticism, doubts, and even financial difficulties, while everyone around was asking if it would really be worthwhile. Most would have given up in the first few years. But it was precisely this patience, this long-term vision, that allowed him to gather the principles that transformed millions of lives through his books. The result didn't come from a stroke of luck, but from consistency and the courage to wait. And it's not just in the business world. Think of Warren Buffett. For years, his strategy was considered too slow. While investors sought quick gains, he patiently accumulated shares of solid companies, reinvesting dividends, without being swayed by haste. Today, he is recognized as one of the greatest investors in history, with a fortune built on patience. What would have happened if he had given up halfway through, in search of immediate results? But here's a crucial point often overlooked. Long-term thinking doesn't mean passive waiting. It means acting daily with the understanding that the rewards will come later. It means studying now to reap better career opportunities down the line. It means investing in assets today, even if the return only comes in 5, 10, or 20 years. It means building strong relationships whose true value only reveals itself with time. And you might be asking, what if I wait and it doesn't work out? That's the fear that paralyzes most people. Risk exists, of course. But consider this. If you plant nothing, what will you harvest in the future? Haste might bring fleeting satisfaction, but it rarely builds anything lasting. It's like planting a tree. You plant today, water tomorrow, and see nothing happen. But those who persist, who nurture, one day enjoy the shade and the fruit. Immediacy is comfortable, but patience is transformative. How many times have you seen people sell their stocks too early, only to realize that if they had waited a few more years, they could have multiplied their capital? How many opportunities have you let slip away because you couldn't wait? Long-term thinking is more than a financial skill. It's a life philosophy. It's understanding that the greatest achievements don't happen overnight, but are the result of consistency, discipline, and vision. And ultimately, that's what separates those who merely dream of wealth from those who actually build it. Because in the end, the true reward isn't just the money you accumulate, but the person you become in the process of learning to wait. A recurring pattern emerges among those who achieve genuine wealth. They never stop learning. The constant pursuit of knowledge is the only way to maintain and expand what has been achieved. Consider this: the world is constantly changing. New technologies emerge, new markets open, new crises arise. Those who become complacent, who believe they already know enough, inevitably fall behind. The mistake most people make is believing that learning ends when they leave school or college. How many people do you know who, after graduating, never picked up a book again, never delved into a new subject? What happens to them is exactly what happens to a curious creature called a sea squirt. This marine animal spends part of its life wandering the ocean until it finds a rock to which it attaches itself. From then on, it doesn't need to move anymore. And do you know what it does? It digests its own brain because it no longer needs it. This image might seem strange, but it's a perfect reflection of many people. As soon as they achieve a little stability, they stop learning, stop evolving, and gradually let their minds atrophy. Now, compare that to someone like Warren Buffett, who dedicates about 80% of his days solely to reading. It's no coincidence that he became one of history's most successful investors. He knows that information and the ability to interpret that information are the greatest competitive advantages anyone can have. While most prefer to spend their free time on mindless entertainment, Buffett transforms knowledge into fortune. But learning doesn't just mean accumulating diplomas or spending years in classrooms. Learning is expanding your mind every day, whether through books, courses, experiences, conversations with smarter people, or even your own successes and failures. It's developing skills that the market values and that make you better prepared for emerging opportunities. Those who learn constantly stay one step ahead, while those who become complacent become hostages to change. A powerful example of this was lived by Napoleon Hill himself. At a certain point in his life, after years of hard work, he faced severe financial difficulties. He could have given up, could have succumbed to frustration, but he chose to learn from the situation. He studied even more, delved deeper into the principles he was discovering, and transformed that moment of pain into fuel to write and teach. The result was a legacy that transcended his own life, impacting generations. Notice, it was precisely in the most difficult moment that constant learning made the difference. And here comes an unavoidable question. Are you developing yourself today? Or are you already behaving like the sea squirt, believing you don't need to learn anything more? In a world where information is available at a click, the excuse of not having access no longer exists. What separates the wealthy from the rest is the discipline of turning knowledge into action. It's not just about learning about finances. Learning to communicate better can open doors you can't imagine. Learning to sell can completely change your career. Learning leadership can transform an ordinary team into a results machine. And all of this is within your reach, as long as you keep an open mind. Wealth is not just the sum of material assets, but also the sum of what you carry within yourself. Money can be lost, investments can fail, but what you learn can never be taken from you. That's why people who build solid knowledge are able to rebuild themselves even after major setbacks. Because the true asset is in the mind. The question you need to ask yourself is simple. If everything you have were lost today, would the knowledge you've accumulated be enough to rebuild your life? If the answer is no, it might be time to reconsider how you've been investing in continuous learning. Because ultimately, those who never stop learning never stop growing. There's a final point that ties everything else together, without which nothing said so far holds: the ability to reinvent oneself, to not be content with what one already knows, and to constantly seek new ways to grow. This is the spirit of adaptation. Because, after all, it's not enough to learn once and believe that will be enough for a lifetime. The world changes, the economy changes, the markets change, and those who don't keep up with this evolution end up falling behind, even if they were once successful. How many stories have you heard of people who built fortunes in one sector and, because they didn't adapt to the transformations, lost everything in a short time? Just look at the giant companies of the past that seemed invincible, but crumbled precisely because they didn't open themselves to the new. Blockbuster, for example, dominated the movie rental market, but didn't realize that the future was in streaming. Netflix started small, offering something that seemed irrelevant at first, and today has become a global colossus. The lesson is clear: those who don't reinvent themselves die. Now think of the opposite. How many people do you know who, even facing crises, managed to turn things around because they had the humility to relearn? This is exactly what separates those who accumulate wealth from those who are trapped in old patterns. The wealthy know that constant learning is not just about accumulating information, but also about adjusting, changing course when necessary, and preparing for what doesn't yet exist. And here comes a very human aspect: pride. Many don't want to admit that they need to relearn, that they need to update themselves. They think they already know everything. This is the first step toward stagnation. The wealthy, on the contrary, are not afraid of appearing ignorant. They ask questions, seek mentors, surround themselves with smarter people, and don't mind starting over when they realize that the old strategy no longer works. Napoleon Hill experienced this intensely. During the Great Depression of 1929, many of the millionaires he studied lost entire fortunes. Some never recovered, precisely because they insisted on the same business models that no longer worked. But others, who had the courage to adapt, not only rebuilt their lives, but also expanded their assets even further. Hill observed this contrast closely and realized that true wealth lies not only in accumulating, but in having the mental flexibility to change when the world demands it. And here's a direct reflection for you. If tomorrow the market you work in ceased to exist, would you have the skills to reinvent yourself? Or would you be stuck with knowledge that is no longer useful? This is a tough question, but a necessary one. Because no matter how much you know today, if that knowledge isn't renewed, it becomes obsolete. Science has shown that people who continue learning throughout their lives not only have a greater chance of financial success, but also live longer and better. Study after study proves that learning keeps the brain active, strengthens mental health, and increases levels of well-being. In other words, continuous learning is not only a strategy to get rich, but also a way to live more fully. Perhaps the greatest danger is not failing, but believing that you no longer need to evolve. The world is full of examples of people who reached the top and then lost everything because they believed they already knew enough. Arrogance destroys more fortunes than ignorance. The humility to continue learning, to adapt, and to reinvent oneself is what ensures that wealth is not fleeting, but lasting. Ultimately, the real difference between those who remain ordinary and those who achieve extraordinary results lies in this willingness to never stop. Because when you understand that each stage of life demands a new version of yourself, you realize that growth never ends. And by accepting this, you discover what the wealthy have always known. Fortune lies not only in accumulated money, but in the infinite capacity to transform. If there's one key takeaway from our conversation, it's this: wealth isn't a matter of luck. It's the result of conscious choices, consistently made day in and day out. It's about how you manage your time, build assets, leverage opportunities, cultivate a long-term perspective, and maintain the discipline to continuously learn and reinvent yourself. That's the real secret of the wealthy. And since you're still here, it's clear you're committed to growth. So, take advantage of the next video now appearing on your screen. It's another step forward on your journey to wisdom, helping you become 1% better than you are today. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.